All right, good morning. So we are here, our latest episode of Target Ag. We're here with Mr. Trip Williams. He's joining us this morning, and we're going to be talking about turf. So if you would, Trip, take a minute to introduce yourself, and Lucas and I'll get this thing rolling.
Sure. Trip Williams, Columbia County Extension. If you're not familiar with Columbia County, it's just north of Augusta, Georgia. We have mainly homeowner horticulture is the number one thing here in Columbia County. It's a few little row crops here and there, but not many, handful, but I would say the majority of it is uh, homeowner horticulture. So anything from turf to disease to plant material to, and then of course servicing the ISA holders, credit holders, and then also the pesticide, private pesticides, and also commercial pesticides. So um, pretty large bedroom community, I guess. We do have several industries in our area, but we're basically kind of the bedroom community to Augusta and the hospitals downtown. So,
Okay.
but again, I mean, this is my cup of tea, right? Turf.
All right.
So,
So
Yes.
you would
But
would you say that most of your your pesticide trainings and updates and whatnot lean themselves toward more of the turf and not the row crop or the beef side?
that's correct. Yes,
Okay.
100%. I
Right.
mean, don't get me wrong. We've got cattle. We've got hay fields. I mean, uh, we, we're a large county. This just that the majority of the rural areas are up in my neck of the woods, which is Appling, which is on the northern part of the county. But so is Harlem and Grovetown. And right now we're having this big growth that's moving out this way. So um, the only portion of the county that is actually restricted as of right now for building is Appling. You have to have a minimum of 5 acres or more to build, where everywhere else can be, the typical neighborhoods. So right now, this is the only area, and we're on the northern end of the county. I would say that the majority of our cattle, hay production, things of that nature, and also the little bit of row crop that we have is in the northern part in Appling, but then also in Harlem and Grovetown. So, but again, it's developing. We've got a tremendous amount of development that happens in Columbia County. I want to say at one time we were number one. I think we're number two in the fastest growing in the state. And probably 3, 4 years ago, there was an article came out where like the best places to live in Georgia and Columbia County was number one. So
Oh, nice.
it's just because of the median income is
Right.
I, I
basically that.
I can
And
say something like this because I live in Grovetown, I live in Columbia County, so
yeah.
it's just keeps growing and it's really good to live there. But amazing. Trip, I have a question for you just before we get started. Uh, what got you interested in turf grass in the really beginning of your career?
So, I mean, you want to go back to when I was in college and I didn't know what I wanted to do?
Really up to you,
Yeah, what you want to
Sure,
be when you
sure.
grow up?
Um, so we can go back there. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I started out at Georgia Southern University, and I've got a part-time job in summer of '97, and started helping a guy who do maintenance and installation. And I was amazed at the um, ability for him to identify plant material. So, and that kind of drew my interest into going into a horticulture degree. So I searched around, found out the University of Georgia had a horticulture department, and transferred up and did a bachelor's in landscape and grounds management. It's a bachelor's in agriculture and landscape and grounds management. So that's kind of where I started. But again, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was just, one of those part-time jobs that led me into, hey, it was kind of neat to understand, this guy came in and he goes, well, these aren't, gardenia radicans. And I was like, well, how do you know what a gardenia radicans is? So that's kind of what got me going in that direction. It wasn't per se turf. It's just that the industries that I've worked in. So when I graduated from university, I worked at a golf course, local golf course here, Westlake Country Club. And then after that, I worked in private landscape for a local landscape firm.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. A good background.
Yeah, well,
That's,
getting a start at a golf course is definitely going to drive you towards turf because they're
oh yeah.
super. Yeah. And I guess with that, my next question would be, all right, so if you're thinking about homeowners, and what are the main types of turf? I know with golf courses, there's tons of different varieties, and I mean they'll have varieties for turfs. I mean for greens as fairways and everything. But if you're just the common everyday homeowner, you've built the home with your greens, and you're like, how do I pick which sod I need to go buy and put down? What are you talking to this homeowner about?
So a lot of it boils down to the environmental conditions. Are we dealing with a shaded environment, a full sun environment, a semi, partial shade sun? It really just depends on that environment that it's growing in. There are four main warm season turf grasses that we can grow: Bermuda and Zoysia, and then of course centipede and St. Augustine. Um, I would say, and everybody's kind of in the same realm that I'm in. I mean, basically, Luke, you're basically due west of us, so
Right,
we don't really delve into the cool season grasses like some of the fescues or some of the perennial rise and things of that nature. But we can't overseed some of our warm season turfs, but it is strictly a cool season turf, not something that we would recommend to persist throughout the growing season. So, you've got to get north of Atlanta before you can kind of get into some of those fescues. Now, don't get me wrong, we can have some microenvironments that we can actually implement a fescue or a perennial rye into. Um, but it's unique. I mean, it would be a
right.
complete shaded environment that would be right up against a creek that would always be 20 degrees cooler than anywhere else, So, um, that, but again, our four main Bermuda, Georgia, Centipede, St. Augustine, it's really going to be based on those environmental conditions, the sun, shade. Currently, we've got a lot of different grasses that will do very well in our full sun environments. Of course, um, everybody knows Bermuda. The majority of the ones that are out here are probably a 419 that's out there. The Tifway 419, that was the standard until as of late, where now we've gone to the Tif Tough, just because of the aggressive growth that it has and the drought tolerance and the color. So, if somebody comes to me and says, "What's the best grass for me to grow?" The first question is what's your environment like? So if you have full sun, not a problem. Bermuda's going to be the way to go. The difference is that a lot of times people go, "Well, you know, well, I've got full sun." It's like, okay, did you clear the entire lot? Are you putting in landscape plants? Are you putting in trees? Because if that's the case, we've got to think about 10, 15, and 20 years down the road. A lot of times people go, "Well, I had Bermuda." This is the number one question I get. "I had Bermuda, it looked great. We've been in here 20, 25 years, and now all of a sudden it's just disappearing." And then I say, "Well, do you have trees? Like landscape trees?" "Oh yeah, that's where it's leaving. I just can't get it to grow under there because Bermuda's the only grass that can actually shade itself out." So people always ask, "Why is my Bermuda brown?" And I say, "Well, when did you cut it?" And they go, "Well, I cut it 2 days ago, but it's still brown." And I said, "Well, what's your cutting height on?" And they usually say, "Well, I usually maintain it about 2 inches." But then if you're maintaining at 2 inches, then it's growing up to about 3 to 3.5, and then you cut it. Well, the only thing that's left is a stem. There's no leaf blade. You cut all the leaf blade off, so that green is gone. So now you have brown grass. Actually, it's just a brown stem, and it has to rejuvenate that leaf blade. So, um, again, when we start thinking about down the road, especially if we're going to get into some shaded environments, I usually do recommend some shade tolerant grasses. Um, Zoysia is probably our number one. There's a couple different varieties that can do pretty well. Zeon's readily available in our area. It's Zeon. That's a Zeon Zoysia. That's a really good one, especially in our area. Um, there's a couple of different ones. There's Zorro. That's another thin blade. Xeon and Zorro kind of look like Bermuda. It's just a little bit dense. It's more dense. I always tell people it looks like Bermuda on steroids. Like you go out there and you look down into the canopy, you really can't see the soil, can't see the soil profile or the dirt at all underneath that canopy because of the density. Um, there's also a little bit of wider blade that are both shade tolerant. There's a jammer, and then there's an El Toro. And jammer looks like Jamur, so it's just Jamur, but for some odd reason they pronounce it jammer. So those are
Uh,
our four main shade tolerant turf grasses. They can go down to about 4.5 hours of direct sunlight. I've had Xeon. I currently have Xeon. We had a play set when my son was born. We put it in when he was 5. We just got rid of it this past summer, probably 2 months ago.
Mhm.
And I have one bald spot that was exactly where the tire swing under the little A-frame. So all I've done is gone out there and poked some holes, some core aeration, and top dressed it with a little bit of a compost, and it's already starting to migrate in to cover it. So it does really good in a shade environment. But when we start talking about recommendations are going to be based strictly on the environmental conditions that we're growing in, but then also hopefully preparing for the future. Um, and of course, it does go back to the pocketbook. A lot of people, um, I know a lot of our Bermudas are a lot cheaper. Don't get me wrong. Tiff Tuff's pretty expensive. I want to say it's around 275 to 300 a pallet. And then when you get into some of these oranges, they can be 375, 425 a pallet. So,
right.
Cool. Interesting. Uh, I just have one that you just mentioned aeration now, and I have a
mhm.
question about this. Like, I have a kind of doubt. Should people aerate their lawn like every year or only sometimes? How this works sometimes? Because I had a question before about
Mhm.
this, and I was in a doubt. Can you explain for us?
Yeah, sure. So unfortunately, we live in a golf course community, right? So
That's right. That's
we've got
right.
a ton of golf courses around here, and a lot of people think that, hey, I see the golf course out there, they're punching holes and, throwing sand everywhere.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's just not a home lawn, okay? A golf course and a home lawn are maintained in different ways. So um, you can core aerate, you only core aerate during the warm season. So what they're trying to do is to rejuvenate that growth. So why do we core aerate? Big questions, right?
Hmm.
What we want to do is we want to break up compaction, but then we also want to drive water, nutrients, and oxygen down into that soil profile for those root systems to grow and expand. Um, a lot of times, is it something that somebody needs to do on an annual basis for a home lawn? Absolutely not. Um, you got to think, people have this misconception, well, they see the golf course do it like once or twice during the year, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you were to go and look at a turf field, like a football field where that has all of that play or a soccer field, they can do those things up to like 100 times during that playing season. So people just, they don't see it. So out of sight, out of mind. But, a lot of people get that itch, everybody's got to compete with somebody, right? And you want to have that nice lawn. You see the golf course doing it and you're like, oh, I need to go do that. Um, only during the growing season. I tell people here in our area, wait till after May. So we're getting into that June time period. We don't have a problem with, um, that late frost that might come in that April time period. You don't want to jump the gun, and the reason being is you're opening up that soil profile. So therefore, if we core aerate, say in March, and we have that late March frost at 20 degrees, well, that cold temperature just went down to that root system. So there's a potential to do some damage that way. Again, you're relieving compaction and you're getting nutrients, water, and oxygen to that root system. So, for a general rule of thumb, I usually tell people every like 3 to 5 years. Um, Everybody always wants to top dress, no sand. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the top dressing mixes that you purchased are usually about 80% sand, but it doesn't look that way, right? I don't want play sand. I don't want you to go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any other big box store and buy play sand and put that on top of the ground. Um, that's again, that's a golf course situation because of their drainage. Um, a lot of the sand that gets put out there is on those green surfaces, and those greens are USGA spec, and it's all about drainage there, right? Um, they can manipulate how much water's put on, how much water stays in the profile, based on depending on what equipment they have under that green. So for a home lawn though, and especially in our area with some of our heavy clay soils,
Mhm.
sand and clay doesn't mix. And you know what makes a brick, right? Sand, clay, and
Yeah,
heat.
sand, clay, and heat.
There you go. There you go.
You're not good. And
So
like
with
for
that,
example, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Go
All
ahead.
right. Okay. So I guess what I was going to ask was with that, and we're kind of following on. You talked a lot about the core aeration, but I get do I really need a soil sample, or can I just throw 10, 10, 10 at it and that be good? Since we're kind of talking about soil
Sure.
anyway, let's stay on that track for just a second.
So, as an agent, your number one thing, and as
Yep.
um, basically a professional in the industry, we can't guess at things, right? We
Yes.
don't want to say, it's no different than I always equate it back to this. I always say, well, your car needs maintenance, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and it tells you when it needs an oil change, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same type situation. We recommend every 3 years for the soil sample. Soil sample is pretty inexpensive, especially with the information that you get back. Um, we can do it prior to planting. And when you get a soil sample back, they'll have a for establishment and for maintenance on there. And for establishment means before I put the sod down or the sprigs or plugs or whatever you want to do, right? And then after that, the for maintenance means it's already established, it's here, I have it, I just need to maintain it. Um, Soil sampling does a couple of different things. One, it tells you where our pH is. All right. So pH is critical. pH, I always equate it back to this. pH is like the key that unlocks the pantry. So if I had a pantry over there and it was locked, I couldn't get in, so I couldn't eat when I wanted to, right? But
Yep.
if I had that key to where I could unlock that pantry and go in and get what I wanted when I wanted, I'd be fat and happy, right? So that's what that pH does. It unlocks that nutrition that's already in the soil. And the great thing about it is that people tend to forget that, there are nutrients already there. So when you say 10, 10, 10, it could be where if we're just guessing, right? We don't get to just guess what's there. Rule of thumb, especially for, dolomitic limestone and 10, 10, 10 or will work in certain instances. They work usually on food plots. I get a lot of calls about food plots. They don't want to do soil samples. And I say, well, you can spend $10 and probably save 50% of what you're going to spend if we just go based off of a rule of thumb. Because it's two tons to the acre of dolomitic limestone in a food plot, just rule of thumb, and 300 pounds of a triple 13. And then you think, well, do the math on that. And then you go back and you pull that soil sample and you go, oh, well, I only needed a half a ton. And then we're only doing, 100 pounds of a triple 13. So
Right.
when we start talking about a, 5,000 square foot or 5,000 square foot plot, a postage stamp of our turf, it breaks it down a lot easier. So not only does it tell you your pH, it tells you the nutrition that's in the soil, and then it will tell you the formulation of the fertilizer to use, how much to use, and when to use it, which takes away the guesswork, right? It will say,
Right.
you need, let's just say a great example would be, I'm just going to use 10, 10, 10. All right. And you go, okay, what grass are you growing? Well, I grow centipede. Well, we already know that centipede has a potential for phosphorus toxicities. So that's that middle number on the formulation of the fertilizer. So you have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are those three numbers on the front of the bag. There's a potential for you to have a little bit of a phosphorus toxicity if it's too high. So what the recommendation might be is you go out and you take a soil sample and it's above the needed level. So therefore, they're going to recommend you get away from phosphorus altogether and do like a 5-0-15 or a 15-0-15. So again, we need to make sure that we're tapping into what's there already in the soil and then therefore adding what's needed. So again, when it goes to do I just use 10-10-10? Of course not. I mean, my soil samples here are $10. I don't know what y'all's are. I've seen it anywhere between 8 to 10. I've seen some places have 12. We don't make any money off that. That goes straight to the lab and then it pays for the shipping and then the information's then sent back to the homeowner. And of course, if they have any questions, they give us a call and we walk it through it. But again, the great thing is that it truly breaks down. The formulation. So, if you were to pull up a soil sample and we were going for the maintenance, it would read, you'll apply 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet of 15015, and then it will say when spring growth begins and again in midsummer. So when spring growth begins in our area is going to be May 1st. Everybody's kind of like, well, it starts in April and it does, and you're right, it does. It starts. The difference is that we don't want to go into we're taking in consideration we're talking about a centipede lawn here. That centipede lawn and that St. Augustine lawn transition into dormancy and out of dormancy kind of a little bit long. They're prolonged. Okay. So May 1st is going to be your very first fertilization on those. But if we were talking about Bermuda and Georgia, we could get away with a mid-April. And I usually tell people when you get back after Masters, if you leave for town, that'd be the time to fertilize a Bermuda and Georgia. But if we're talking about a St. Augustine or centipede, it's going to be May 1st. And then, of course, mid-July, and everybody goes, well, what's midsummer? Everybody understands what July 4th is. Just do it after that. It's perfect timing. Don't let people guess. Just give them a designated period of time.
Right.
So
That's right. That's right. That's
Good,
right.
good cheat code to have. May and July 4th. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to remember. So
And
like
that's centipede and St. Augustine. Those are those two grasses, and that's usually, they're, you know, centipede's a pound to a pound and a half of nitrogen per year, and then St. Augustine's usually around 3. So sometimes you'll have that third application on that St. Augustine grass, where Bermuda and Georgia you can have 4 or 5. But again, that soil sample tells you that information.
that's right. That's right. Changing the topic just a bit, about pests and diseases around us in terms of turf. How do you deal with, and like without just spraying chemicals, how do you deal with this problem sometimes?
What we just talked about, the soil
Yeah,
sample.
that's right.
And people
That's
don't
right.
get it. People
That's right.
people truly don't understand like a healthy, vigorous grass is the number one way to outcompete weeds and not have disease pressure.
That's
When
right.
things starts getting stressed, people tend to forget this too. I mean, we've got a lot of different stressors that go on in the environment. Take this year, for example. We've turned off pretty wet.
Yeah.
Probably in the last 2 weeks, we've had about 6 to 7 inches here. Go back 2 months, we were in a deficit, right? We were in a severe drought. Go back into January, February, late January, early February, we had another snow event, right? So you take all those things, they compound over years, right? It's not just right now. I think it's funny. It's Dr. Waltz always says you get the point, like look right here, you don't have to look right here, right now. You've got to think about it prior, where we were and what we've transitioned into. Um, we haven't talked about it yet, but another one's calibrating the irrigation system. People tell me all the time, I say, how long do you water? And they go, I do it 3 times a week, 30 minutes a zone. Well, how much is that? I don't, what do you mean? How much is that? I don't know. It's a lot because I paid my bill and my bill's a lot, right? And it's like, but the difference is how much water are you truly applying during that 30-minute time period? Um, I tell people all the time, and I've had people, tell me they're not going to do it, and I say, okay, I mean that's fine, but again, it's something that you need to do. We actually have them. Um, we have these here, which anybody can have them. They're tuna fish cans, but they're dog food, cat food cans.
Mhm.
Same size. We have five, um, and it's one of those where these go out in a zone, right? So wherever your zone is, let's just say your front yard's the first zone, right? You would randomly put these five cans out in that zone, turn it on, run it. You can run it for 15 minutes. I usually tell people if they are pop-up rotors or impact heads, the single stream that oscillates, back and forth, right and left,
Uh-huh.
I tell them to do 30 minutes, right? But again, you can break it down into minute increments after it's done. So once it goes off, what you're going to do is you're going to go out there. See, I know I've got a, thought I did. For some reason, I can't find my ruler. But what you're going to do is you're going to go out there after you get done, and you're going to stick your ruler down into this can and measure the amount of water that was collected in the bottom of it. And you're going to take an average. You're going to measure each one individually, and you're going to take an average of that, right? That's going to let you know how much water you put down during that amount of time. From that, you can say, all right, well, I know in regular growing conditions, I need 1 inch per week. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, let's
Right.
just say you ran it 30 minutes and you got a half inch.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out that easy, but let's just say it did, right? So that means that you could run it twice a week and provide that 1 inch of rain,
Right.
quote unquote, right? When we get into drought conditions, 3 to 4 weeks without rain, 90-degree plus temps, we do need to go to up to 1.5 inches. And then you could just add that additional day. We do want deep and infrequently, so if we're watering twice a week, I'd probably do like a Tuesday and a Friday. And then if we went into a drought condition, I'd probably do a Monday, Thursday, or a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday is probably what I'd do. You're
Right.
supplying half inch during that time period. You're getting a good soil saturation. And that's what we need. We want to, what we're trying to do is build its drought tolerance by creating deeper root systems to where it can actually just go on its own. The other part of that is, don't get me wrong, we always have questions about plants. So we have pop-up misters or risers that are spray heads that do a continuous spray. I usually tell people to do it 5 minutes and then measure because those are putting out a continuous spray over that entire area. So you get a tremendous amount of water coming out of those heads other than the oscillating types, right?
Right.
Because you have a single stream that goes right to left, and then you have a mister that comes up and sprays that entire whatever angle it is. Maybe it's 180 degrees. It's constantly soaking that area. So um, I usually tell people, which is not done that way, um, they're all gallons per hour heads. But a lot of times when you start measuring, those mister heads are usually about a gallon per minute. So when people tell me, which it's not, but it's right there at it. When you start talking about, collecting 30 minutes, this can may be overflowing in those risers or misters versus
That's
your
cool.
rotors or impact heads. So when you start talking about disease or weed or whatever pressures, healthy, vigorous turf is your number one tool. And that is calibration of the irrigation system, doing your soil sample to ensure your pH and nutritional value is where it needs to be. But then when you have problems, we need to look at it. Photos always help. I will say we really didn't have an issue with disease until probably the last week. It's really started to come on. But again, what's happened prior to that? We've been in these huge stressors, right? And now all of a sudden we're getting these afternoon thunder showers that are
Yes.
lengthening the leaf wetness period, and
Hmm.
they're causing some diseases and some stress spots. I've got one in my yard. I've got a scalp spot that always gets scalped just because of where it is. I haven't gone in there and done any kind of raising to either end of it, but it started out about the size of a seat cushion. And in the last week, it has actually grown to about the size of a truck hood. But again, I look at it like this way. I know what the problem is. I know it's a disease. I've already bought the fungicide. I just haven't put it out because I've had other things to do in the weekends. But the number one thing I need to do is I need to apply that fungicide. I will core aerate that area to again entice that growth. Again, what are we doing when we core aerate? We're reducing the compaction, which I've already told you we scalped it with the mower. So obviously it's pressed down. We're also getting water, nutrients, and oxygen to that root system to rejuvenate that area. And then what I'm going to do is a little light top dressing, no more than a quarter inch of like a mushroom or a black cow compost. What we're looking for is something that you can't tell what it once was. So if you go in the store and the bag's broken open and you can look at it and you pull up, a handful of it and there's sticks and big chunks of bark and stuff like that, you don't want that product. You don't want to know what it once was. You add a little quarter inch to that area. So you've treated with a fungicide, so you've treated the problem. You've core aerated to reduce compaction and bring in nutrients, water, and oxygen. And then you're doing a light top dressing. And again, all you're doing is kind of sweetening the pot a little bit to allow those runners to come in, those stolons to come in and cover that area back up. And usually it takes about a month, 2 months, depending on the turf,
Hmm.
depending on the size of the area. But I mean, like I said, I took out a that swing set. It's been 2 months. It's at least been
Hmm.
2 months.
Okay.
They're pretty much
Uh,
covered except the one tire swing. That tire swing was about the size of a truck hood. So it's getting there, but it's going
It's
to
good
take
enough.
probably the end of the summer to get it covered.
I
All
appreciate
right.
you saying that because I've had clients that'll be like, well, I did this week and I did this last week and I did this next week. And I'm like, give it some time.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
No, yeah. No, I mean that goes with like weed control. People
Hmm.
people think, especially during the cooler season or normal growing conditions, products don't work as fast. That plant is not metabolizing as fast as it possibly can, right? So it's not drawing that herbicide in, it's not spreading that herbicide, and translocating it throughout the plant and killing it faster. Um, Cooler temperatures and also the size of the plant make a big difference. There's no one and dones, right? There's
right.
no, I go out there, spray it one time and I kill everything. You
Hmm.
could if it's probably about the size of a dime, but a lot of times people don't see those weeds the size of a dime. When they see them, they're
Yeah.
the size of like a cell phone or a dinner plate. That's when they see them.
Yep.
And then that's going to take multiple applications, right? It's not going to be a one and done. So, um, biggest key with weed control, the product has to work in the plant. If you cut the grass and then go out and spray that afternoon, you wasted the product. You have damaged the plant. The plant is basically shut everything down, is trying not to lose water, it is not taking anything in. And you spray that product, it's not going to take it in, it's not going to do anything. And you're going to say, well, what happened? So what I was saying is that there's a time opportunity that you can actually spray or treat to manage some of our weeds. And the thing is that you got to do 2 days prior to mowing and 2 days after mowing. So if you
Hmm.
want to treat a weed, you need to go in there and treat, and then allow at least 2 to 3 days to pass before you mow the lawn. That allows that product to get into the turf, into that weed and move around and translocate within that plant. And then also 2 days after you mow. And the reason being is you don't want to go out there and spray. We're making these solutions. These solutions land on the leaf. We've got a 1 to 5% solution, and we're trying to get 1 to 5% of that solution into it, right? So it's minute amounts going inside. Well, a lot of times it only penetrates the leaf. It's not translocated yet. And if you were to go out there, spray, and then go again and cut it, next thing you know, you just cut off the chemical, right? Or cut off the product. But again, if you do it the opposite way, if you cut then spray, the plant's damaged. The plant is basically in survival mode. It's not trying to take anything in. It's just trying to kind of hold on to what it has. So you're looking for that regrowth, that activity of regrowth before you make those applications. So weed control can be tough, especially for homeowners. Identifying the weed is number one. That's why we're here. Send in a photo. I tell people all the time the fastest way to get a photo to me is through email. But if you have a smartphone, you can take a photo, hit the share button in a message, and then put in my email address. Just make sure that they're sending one photo at a time because those photos are pretty large, and send it. Making sure that we get the broad overview of the weed, of what it looks like. I know grasses are really tough to ID, um, especially random grasses that are growing, in the back 40. Um, Seed heads help tremendously. So if you can allow it to go to a seed head, that definitely will help. Um, the majority of the stuff that I see that comes in, are pretty run of the mill. I mean, I've been doing this 14 years with extension, and I've learned a lot and have seen a lot. And when you experience it, that's where that knowledge is gained. There's been a lot of weeds that I've learned since I've been in this position. Some of the stuff that at golf courses we didn't really care to ID. It was like, this is the timing, this is what we're doing, and this is our target pest. If we kill the other stuff that's out there, great. So home lawns are, like I said, completely different. But when we start talking about maintenance, our for the majority of the part in our area, we've got two pre-emergent applications of spring and fall. I usually tell them to get it out during March and then in October. Don't get me wrong, the companies are doing split applications. We're asking you to do one full application during that time period, where they would actually take that and split that into two in the month before and the month after. But for the majority of the part, we're saying March and October for pre-emergent. And the great thing about a homeowner maintaining their lawn with some type of herbicide is that you're there every day. It's not something, this company's coming every other month, and they're spraying a product. You're there every day, so you can actually have a mixture that's there, agitate it, go out and spot treat things instead of blanket sprays, and treat the tough weeds that you have. A lot of them are not tough. I will say, depending on the type of turf grass, you got to make sure that those turfs are tolerant to those herbicides. But again, that's why we're here. We can help people out with that.
That's right. That's right. All right. Do you have another question, Luke?
Um, so I guess the one question I want to ask last, I think we've talked about just about everything we had on the list. A few times, I have had people specifically talking about, and I want to say it's called burrweed.
Hmm.
And here's the thing. I want my kids or I want my grandkids to be able to run around here barefoot. And I've got these little spiky balls that they're worse than stepping on Legos. When and how do you recommend people getting rid of those? Because I know that they grow in the spring or they grow in the fall and go to
Yep.
seed in the spring. And when they've gone to
Yep.
seed is when they're those spiky little demon legs.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
So, lawn burrweed is a winter annual. So your October pre-emergent usually misses them because they haven't germinated quite yet, which is pretty amazing because depending on the pre-emergent that you use, a lot of times you can get 30 to 90 days of some type of pre-emergent application. So that herbicide's still there in that usually top quarter inch of soil profile, and it kills any seed, not just weed seed, any seed. People have that misconception, like, oh, well, I put a pre-emergent down, then I put ryegrass down. Well, you just killed the ryegrass. So, um, any seed that's there that's starting to germinate, it will take in that herbicide and kill it. Um, Lawn burrweed is a little special. So you're going to miss your preem. If you do it, then you'll catch probably 80% of it. The ones that you don't catch, depending on the turf grass, a lot of times you can get rid of it with some three ways, which are 2,4-D, MCPP, and dicamba. Those are going to be usually on your Bermuda and Georgia. So you cannot use those during the winter time for your St. Augustine and centipedes. Atrazine is what you're going to be able to use on those in the fall and winter months. And then you've got a little window of opportunity in the spring. When we start to come out, they haven't developed those seed pods yet, right? And they're starting to grow. There'll be this little bitty, probably dime size kind of weed that just looks like a little um, frilly piece of parsley is what it really
Hmm.
looks like sitting down there. And when it starts to grow in that March time period, you have an opportunity to take it out completely. There is a product called Celsius that will do very, very well on that particular one. It comes in a little small package too, which is really, really good for homeowners. Comes in like a 0.0226 gram packet that already has the surfactant mixed in it. So therefore, you can actually take that water dispersible granular, mix it in to like I want to say it goes from 1, 2, and 3 gallons. The label will tell you exactly, the mixture rate based off of the weed that you're trying to control. Um, and what you can do is in there, that packet will mix in 1, 2, or 3 gallons, but that will depend on the rate that it's applied at. So therefore, you can manage the weed that you're looking for. On that one, I want to say it's a 1 gallon mixture because it needs the higher rate. Um, but it does a really good job, and it's good for all warm season turfs. So you can use that particular product on all 4 of our warm season turfs. Um, I will say, usually people drag their feet a little bit, right? I mean, I do it. I've already told you I went from, scalping my lawn to now have a disease, you know, in my lawn that's the size of a truck hood because I've just had other things to
Uh-huh.
do, right? Instead of go out there and
Mhm.
do it. So
You're not
if you
alone.
get no, yeah, yeah, if you get late in the season, or early in the season, I guess would be, when you get into spring, I have suggested doing paint rollers, like the real fluffy nap, the rollers that you can buy. The fluffier, the better. Um, and go out there and go over the top of the grass with them because really you don't have a grass, it's still dormant. But the great thing
Hmm.
about that nappy roller, it will pick up those burrweed, it will pick those stickers up, and then basically you can just take like a trimmer, like a beard trimmer, and kind of shave that thing off a little bit and go back over it
Yeah.
and pick them up.
You may
I've
have a
suggested
neighbor that
that.
you don't want to talk to, and if you're out there paint rolling your grass, you may never talk to them again either.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, right? But I had a person that had a little dog that would not go out in the backyard because the entire backyard was that. That's all it was.
Uh-huh.
Um, And I suggested doing the paint roller, and she looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I said, "Listen, if you want the dog to use the restroom outside and not on this pad or inside, then I would suggest you try it." And she goes, "Okay, I'll try it." She called back. She said, "It's the best thing." She said, "You'd be amazed. I picked up so many." And I said, "Well,
Right.
think about this. You picking up those seed you've picked up the majority of the seed that is deposited for next fall that it was going to germinate." And she goes, "You're right." And I go, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we're here to help you out.
Yeah. So the concept is a lint roller, and it really does work well, but it's still. I mean, I can just picture it, and I'm like, oh, that's going to look so funny. But if it works, it works.
Oh,
Go for it.
hey, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, again, we've drug our feet and we're past the point of no return. Because here's the thing, people think about, again, that silver bullet, right? They want to go out there, they will spray one thing and eradicate. That doesn't happen in the world of weeds, right? Or insects. We don't eradicate anything, right?
That's true.
It's a
Hmm.
management. It's not a control, it's a management. So, can you have patches here and there? Of course you can. The difference is like, you're out there every day. If you've got a dog, you're walking the dog, you're out there. So if you see it and you can identify it because we've, come out and pointed it to you, the best thing to do is pull it. If you pull it up, that's people all the time are like, well, what do I need to do for this? And it's like, well, it depends on what it is, in this scenario, pre-emergent and of course the post-emergent over top of it. But again, you could have little pockets here and there, like low spots, that you think it's completely gone, and then there it is down there at the bottom of the yard. Well, if you were out there walking around and you saw it and you had 5 plants, why are you going and buying a product when all you got to do is reach down and pick it out and be done with it? Turn it upside down. You've killed it. Um, you know, there's a lot of different weeds that are like that. Lespedeza is another one. We get a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's all over the place," and there's plenty of products that you can, treat with to manage. The difference is like you could have pulled out, there was a little patch that was like the size of your cell phone, right? And it had
Hmm.
50 in there, and you could have spent 2 minutes pulling every one of them up. I mean, I do it all the time in the lawn. I take the dog out to walk, I go out there and I see stuff. And if it's not what I'm growing, and this is the great thing about it, right? You don't need to know what it is. If it's not supposed to be there, if it's not your turf, then just pull it out. I mean,
Right.
I've got carpet grass in my Zorgia, around that play set. I go out there and I pull it. And it's pretty amazing. Probably in the last 2 months since I've removed it, I think I've got one little patch left. And all I've done is hand pull, no herbicide whatsoever. I've gone out there, the dog's walking, doing his business. I'm down there picking it out of and pulling the runners up, pulling the stolons up, and throwing them right on the grass.
Yeah, I believe
So
that
you don't
that's
even
the
remove
part.
them from the yard. You just let them dry out.
That's it. That's exactly right. All I'm doing is pulling it away from
Right.
the soil, getting it up, letting that root system desiccate, and then there you go.
Okay.
And can you get it to come back in a little? Yeah, of course. I mean, I've had little pieces come back. But again, if you're staying on top of it, you're staying diligent about it, you can pretty much get it out
Right.
of there. So,
Just making an habit, right? So it
well,
will be good.
I mean, again, you're there. That's the whole thing, right? When we start talking about, now, don't get me wrong, when it's 100 degrees like it has been in the last couple of days, you don't want to be out there in the middle of the day. But I mean, in the mornings and in the afternoons, it's bearable. It's 80, but it's a cool 80.
Yeah.
Um, it's not, the super humid, walk out, get soaking wet and, try to breathe, type
Mhm.
scenarios. And especially during the middle of the day, it's that way. So, um, we've had some heat advisories around here, but the afternoons, mornings, go out there, do a little hand pull and just walk around the lawn. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, not everybody has a pet, but I mean, it is pretty amazing when pet has to go out, so you're outside a lot more, than you would be, and just walk around the lawn, see what you see. And again, you don't even have to know what it is. You just need to know that's not so supposed to be in that lawn, so I need to pull it. But
Right.
again, when we talk about size, um, usually the labels will have, like tiller size. Nobody knows what a tiller is, right? And everybody's like, I don't know what a tiller is. This just go based off if it's bigger than a half or a 50-cent piece, or um, if it's bigger than this, you're gonna spend some time on that particular weed. Okay. If it is big
Yeah.
as this, you're going to spend some time on it. It's not going to be a one and done. It's going to be multiple times. But I can promise you one thing, if it's an annual and you go out there with a little steak knife and you pull it up from the base and you cut the root system off and throw it, you're done with it. It's not coming back. Herbicides are not that way. It's a management tool. You're going to shrink it back. It's going to use its reserves and boom, it's going to come back out. Where if you do something like that with like, say crabgrass and you cut it right there at the root and you cut all the top tissue off, you're not dealing with it anymore. It's toast. the root system
Right.
dies.
Cool.
That's right.
Well,
That's right. Good information, man.
yeah, I think this is actually a really good spot to go ahead and wrap up right here. Trip, this has been fantastic. I've learned more
Yeah,
about lawns than I may have ever wanted to know. But we really appreciate you coming on. Lucas, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just say thank you to you, Trip. You always be willing to help us, then your
yeah,
agent, and we really appreciate that. You have a guy with enormous experience, so thank you very much, man. I appreciate that.
Uh,
And to our speakers, thank you again. See you guys next time.
sounds good.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Y'all be
Thank you.
safe.
Bye.